Pulvanaka, good morning, ladies and gentlemen.
Good morning, sir.
I don't feel very comfortable sitting up there on the stage. I'll come over here. As you know, that we've had budget consultations now in Banwalevu with the students in Banwalevu, and then we had consultations with the various disabled associations yesterday in the morning. We're here with you today, and then on Monday we are meeting up with students from the Western Division, and of course then with some of the disabled associations in the Western Division. The idea is for us to be all very interactive. All of you look very serious to me. None of you are smiling. Please use this opportunity to be able to ask us any questions you have. And we'd like to also hear from you your views in terms of what you want in the budget, or what you like in the budget. Before I ask the Permanent Secretary for Finance to do a brief overview in some of the, what we call the key indicators of the economy, I just wanted to set the scene for you in terms of the ability to think about how you want to contribute towards the budget. What is the budget? The budget, ladies and gentlemen, is the amount of money that government sets aside each year to spend for the country. The budget also is the amount of money that the government will also collect as revenue. So in the same way, some of you may get a pocket allowance. You then, as an individual, would decide, okay, I'm going to spend this much on going to the movies, and I'll spend this much on maybe eating at McDonald's or whatever the case may be. So for government, when we say we have to spend money, what do we spend the money on? This school is government owned. So the maintenance of the school is provided for by the government. The teachers that all of you go to schools at, all the teachers' salaries are paid by government. The roads that you travel on is maintained by government. The water that you drink, somebody has to pay for the chemicals. Somebody has to pay for the maintenance of the pipes. Somebody has to lay new pipes. The hospital you go to, the medicine, the doctor's salary, all of that comes from government also, every year. Now, what we also do is we spend money, those are what we call operational costs, just to maintain the place. But they are also what we call capital costs. In other words, things that we use, money that we use, to build things. So we obviously use money to maybe build a new road. You may get money, we use money to build a health center. Or maybe the school has a shortage of buildings, so we put up a new building. Or as you may see, for example, those of you who may have been to the western side, if you go to Sawani side, there are new roads that have been built, new roads that have been tahsil. That's what you call expenditure for your assets. It's always good to spend money for your assets because you know it will last. Now, since independence, nearly every single year, except for 5 years, since independence till now is over 45 years now, since independence. Out of those 45 years, there's only been about 5 years where we have had more money that we have collected than we have spent. In other words, every year we have a deficit. We spend more than what we collect. Most countries in the world have a deficit, where governments actually, in order to spend, they have to borrow. So when you hear on the budget day, the newspapers or the television saying, oh, there's a deficit. Deficit means that we always have some liabilities. So we are collecting less, but spending more. Needs to be done. We're a developing country. We need to build more. During the colonial times, many things weren't built. So we have to build it after independence. Now, the other thing that you also need to be aware of is that there's a term called GDP. You'll say, oh, GDP. GDP has grown. What is GDP? GDP is the gross domestic product, which is the total value of goods and services that a country produces. That's in a way like your wealth. So people will say, oh, your deficit is 2.5% of your GDP. Now those 2.5% of the value of your GDP is the amount that's in deficit. So these are some of the terms that will come up, and I'll explain that to you later on. But please, I'd like you to relax. I'd like you to chill out, as they say. Because when you're more chilled out, you're able to express yourself a lot better. Why are we consulting you? Now this is unprecedented, it's never been done before. We are consulting you because you are the future of Fiji. Most of you will be leaving high school. Some of you may be leaving high school in 2 years' time, some of you will be leaving high school end of this year. Some of you will be going to university. Some of you will be going to colleges or technical colleges. Some of you will be having children in 4 or 5 years' time. Some of you will be, she's poking him, she knows he'll be having children very soon. Some of you will probably become businessmen and women. Some of you will seek employment in 4 or 5 years' time. Now, you will of course be people who will need to understand what decisions are being made now for you, and you also need to be people who will be decision makers also. So this is the reason why we're consulting you. Let me also tell you that 70% of our population, which is actually about 69.6, I think, 69.4% of our population is below the age of 40. We have a very young population base. In some countries, it's the other way around. Countries like Japan, Australia, and various other countries, they have what they call an aging population. There's more older people than younger people. In Fiji's case, we have more younger people than older people. What does that mean? It means that we have to develop policies in the government that will cater for the bulk of the population. If you have an aging population, that means you'll have to cater more for probably medical services, wheelchair access. You know, as people get older, the demands change. When people are younger, your demands are different. You like to go to McDonald's. You like mobile phones. There may be issues pertaining to STDs. There may be issues pertaining to teenage pregnancies. We have to create jobs. Because young people are there, they're coming out of school, we have to make sure that there are jobs. If there are no jobs, then you become unsatisfied. You become unhappy. You become restless. So you may want to go overseas then. You may not contribute to your country. So these are the kind of things that we need to think about. There may be certain issues that you are facing that we may not be aware about. The everyday issues. So we'd like to hear from you. Maybe you've got ideas that some of your other colleagues in your school have told you that you want to share with us. So this is one of the reasons, ladies and gentlemen, that we are consulting you. We want to hear from you. So please do not be shy. Don't just think only one person should speak from DAV Girls School. The other people from DAV Girls School can also talk. Or somebody from, Sugagrama or Maris. The last time I was in this hall was there was a Sugar Grammar School concert, and I was in Form 5. And I came to this concert, and this concert hall looked very, very big then. But this concert hall is still here. Now, we in Fiji have not been very good at looking after our assets. Previously, governments used to build things, but we never set aside money to make sure that it's always well painted, that it does not leak, the roof does not become like that. The same way, for example, when your parents, when they buy a house, when they do an extension to the house, the parents probably make sure that it's painted well, the roof does not leak, the tap does not leak. In the same way, we believe as government, we need to ensure that all the assets that we have is looked after well. We have to do that. We can't simply build something and then leave it. In the same way, you are our assets. Why do you think we are giving TELs? Why do you think we are giving toppers? Because the human resources of any country is the most important asset. You can build a great building, but if there's no good teachers, what's the point of having a building? You can build a great McDonald's store, but if there's nobody working there, who's going to serve? You can build a great hospital and buy the best machine, MRI machine. But if nobody knows how to operate it, what's the point of having a machine? So the reality is that the human capital, what we call the human capital, is the most important capital for any country. If we don't give you TELS, today now about maybe 16 to 17,000 students are being supported by TELS. Before, when we had scholarships only on the ethnic basis, we had only about 6,000 or 7,000 students being affected or assisted. Today we have about 16 to 17,000 students. So the reason why we're doing that is that it's an investment in the future. We are giving Ministry of Education $400 billion every year. That pays for your teacher's salary, pays for the maintenance of schools, it pays for TELS, pays for the scholarships, it pays for your bus fares, those who get subsidized. We pay $20 million a year in subsidized bus fares. You know the bus vouchers you get, some of you may be using that. We have to give the bus companies $20 million for that every year. We don't mind it, but we want you to come to school. We've now created 10 or 11 technical colleges. Why? Because not everybody wants to go to university. Some people are very good with their hands, so they are maybe good carpenters, good pastry chefs. These are all the skill sets that we need. But when you do a budget, ladies and gentlemen, you have to balance. It's a balancing act. Because I'm sure if I spoke to all of you, like I was in Vanuatu the other day, this lady was saying, we want the road in our area at all to be Tasil. So, some of you may not know this because you live in the Suva-Lusuri corridor. There are certain places in Vanuatu where people until recently were drinking water from the creeks, where the boreholes that they had frogs in it. They had frogs in it. There are students today in Fiji who are studying or doing their homework under lanterns. Some of the things that you take for granted in the towns and cities, a lot of people in the rural areas don't have. So there's a lot of needs that we need to fulfill. But there is a certain amount of money that we have. So it's the government's priority to see which areas gets to be dealt with first. It's a question, it's a balancing act. You'll always find some people say, oh, they should have given more money here. Or they should have given more money here. So I asked this lady who said, let's Tasil the roads. I said, do you have electricity? He said, no, we don't have electricity. I said, what would you rather have, electricity or roads? He said, rather have electricity. So you see, this is a question of prioritization. We cannot do everything at once. But what we need to do is think about what are the things that we do first that will help realize our potential. So we saw, for example, education as a huge potential for the country. If you become qualified and better educated or better trained or better qualified, say for example doing carpentry or whatever it may be, you will then be able to get a job quickly. You will then be able to contribute to the economy a lot more quickly. So that's a priority for us. So please relax. Hopefully somebody can stand up and tell us a joke later on. But what I'll do now is I'll get the Permanent Secretary for Finance. And please put your hands together for her. She's the first female Permanent Secretary we've ever had. She also went to Suva Grammar School. So you may not know that. I, of course, went to Maris, so this is a different story. We were rivals then. But ladies and gentlemen, that also brings me to a very important point. You see, in Fiji, traditionally, in particular in the civil service, many positions were only held by men simply because those positions were deemed to be only positions that only men could do. So today, we have for the first time a female Permanent Secretary of Finance, because generally finance was only seen the domain as a male, of the male. That's changed. Now what that brings to us a very important point, and we need you all to understand this, is that in order for our country to do well,
in the same way, in order for any company to do well, any organization to do well, any sporting body to do well, you must always choose the best person for the right job. You must always do that. Now, assuming that this row of people over here and myself, we all apply for one job. And this young man here, we know, is the best qualified and he's the best in his field. But the person who is actually advertised the position, in his mind, he has said, I will only give this job to the person with blue eyes. Right? I only give the job to the person with blue eyes. None of us have blue eyes. None of these people get the job, but assuming I have the blue eyes. I have the blue eyes, and I go in, and I'm a mediocre kind of applicant, but I get the job ahead of him. Not only has he lost his opportunity, which is most unfair and discriminatory, but because I'm a mediocre applicant, this organization will lose out on the best person who can do the best for that organization. So they missed out on a great opportunity. In the same way, if our country does not choose the right person for the right job, the output, the level of productivity, the amount of intellectual input into the job will be minimal, will be little, won't be the best potential input that we'll get. So the overall country loses out. As I asked somebody a question, when you, for example, have to have a surgery, if your kidney needs to be replaced or your heart needs some type of, surgery, or if this lady breaks her arm and she needs to have surgery, is she going to ask, I want the person of this ethnic group, or this religious group, or this province, or this sect, or this color eyes to do my surgery? No. She will say, I want the best surgeon. Your life is at stake. The same way, when you don't have electricity or water does not come in your pipes, do you say, I want to know what ethnic group or religious group or what province the engineer comes from? No. You simply want the water. You simply want the electricity. So that for us, ladies and gentlemen, is something that we need to inculcate in our economy, in our way of thinking. We need to have the best person for the right job, and that's why she is there today.
So thankful that you are able to have us here. My name is Asana Tamarama. I am a university student, and I come all the way from Manchester Secondary School, which all of you don't know where that is. So we have a very small suggestion. In my school, there is no computer classes. And I'm the only computer student in my school. And nowadays, everything is technology, and imagine the lives of the students from there. I mean, after after they have passed their ATOS certificate examination, and when they come over to universities, they just don't know how to operate a computer. And even in my school, when I converse with my colleagues in class, and I talk about internet and so on, they just don't know, they don't have any idea what that is. And students in other schools, they are so fortunate to have computers compared to those in other schools, rural schools like my school. So we are requesting, sir, if we could at least get 3 computers. 3 computers is more than enough. It's small enough to get for the students in my school, and because we have to study for 4+ years teachers, to pass our external examination, and last year for FGC we had 0% pass, and we are one of the underperforming schools in Fiji. And as the head of the school, I have that heart, sir. In Fiji, the government's education is the #1 thing. So in order to get 100% passes, we are the future generations of Fiji. He said, just my 3 computers, sir, please.
Thank you. Two questions. Do you have electricity? And do you get mobile phone connection in your school? We also have a scheme called government telecenters, where some of the schools over here have benefited from it, where we have actually gone and set up. We've actually gone and set up more than 3 computers, and we've given them internet connection, we've given them scanners, we've given them also the mics, and we pay for everything. On the condition that when we set up these telecenters, you allow the people to live in the area after hours to come and use it also. So, but thank you for that, we will definitely address that. But ladies and gentlemen, those of you in particular who live in schools or live in areas where you have or you take computers for granted, you can see the difference between yourself and schools such as that. And this is precisely the reason why I wanted this forum. It's not just for you to make submissions, but for those of you who are the haves, know what your have-nots are going through. It's very important for us to understand. It's also very important for you to understand why when we direct money in certain areas, we want to bring these people up to a particular level that we don't have, or that you are not at, or they are not at. It's very important. As I've said before in some international forums, technology, a lot of people say, is a great equalizer. It don't bring people together, but it also can be the great divider. Because whilst in Suva, in other places you have 4G and you have internet and what have you, here is a lady who's asking only for 3 computers. You see? You may still have schools like in Lau or Lomaiviti or Kandavu or rural Monastabu, wherever it is. They don't even have computers, let alone electricity. So this is the point of difference, and this is what we're trying to do. We want to empower people, and sometimes to run electricity, for example, to one school, just the connectivity can cost $500,000. Just to run the power line. Because that's how remote they are. But we see that as our focus. Because if we don't do that, those people will become more marginalized. So thank you for that, and we'll definitely address that.
I just want to comment on the gap between rich and poor. Rich and poor students. So as we all know that the government has done a lot to reduce the gap between rich and poor. My question is that how the government gives scholarship to those students who are but smart. So we believe that helping the rich to become, like helping those students who have something that doesn't make any difference. But helping a poor who doesn't have nothing, they can eventually keep easy for.
Thank you. I think that's a very relevant and pertinent point in respect of scholarships. But as you also know that there are many people previously who came from poor backgrounds but they did not get scholarship. I had a student, in the days when they had the different ethnic scholarships. Itoke and multi-ethnic scholarships. I had a Itoke student in my office sitting there. He in fact had got more marks than somebody else who had got an Itoke scholarship. But they got the scholarship because they knew somebody in the scheme. But he had got a high mark. Today, thankfully, that student is studying in Cuba. He's been there now for 3 or 4 years. So there are people, for example, even though they've done well and came from low-income families, did not benefit from the previous scheme. But the point that you raised also means that the people, for example, who come from poor backgrounds don't necessarily get marginalized because they may get a better mark. But the other issue that you're addressing is something that we do need to work through. Thank you.
Okay, 3, 2, 1, smile.